Let's talk about some sample selection. Sample items should be selected in a way that the sample can be expected to be representative of the population. Nothing groundbreaking here, but it has to be said. The point of sampling is to try to understand the whole population by doing minimal work. Instead of asking every single of the thousands of students at a college campus if they enjoy a particular food in the cafeteria, ideally we'd get it so we can ask 100 of them. And to plan that sampling, there's actually a lot of money involved in sampling. And I've known a lot of people in this industry, just outside of accounting as well. There's a lot of money because it's efficiency. Sampling and testing and data and statistics, super important field. So hey, if any of you ever want to go that route, highly recommend it. This saves on so much time. Instead of asking all of the thousands and thousands of college students what your favorite meal in the cafeteria is, you're just going to ask 100. But the thing is, you select that sample of 100 students so effectively that it does represent the whole population. This is going to be super broad, but you're going to select one student who's vegan, one who's a vegetarian, one who just loves meat, one who eats salads every day. Try to diversify there just to get a wonderful selection to hopefully be representative of the population of the whole campus. Now, if you know that in general the campus is 60% carnivorous and loves meat, you'll probably want to get your sample to be 60 to represent that population. That's the goal. And similarly, so too do we do an audit. Right? If the majority of the transactions that a company does involve cash instead of AR, well, you're probably going to test cash much more. Or if this company sells a lot more of product A than product B, you're going to test a lot more transactions that involve product A much more. So all items in the population should have an opportunity to be selected. We want to make sure that it's representative of the whole population. If you just take some items and say, oh, I'm not going to include these in the sample, well, you're cutting out part of the population that won't be tested. That's a problem. We've got different types of sampling, haphazard selection. So these are how you select the actual samples. These are not the sampling methods. These are methods in which you select the actual sample. Haphazard, it's kind of like put your blindfold on and haphazardly select different items from the population to include in your sample. You've also got random-based selection. In reality, you got different methods of random generators, random sample generators. These are just two methods to select samples. Bunch of different ways you could select it. You could select, you get a list of 100 items. Maybe you select the fourth of, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, select that one, 5, 6, 7, 8, you select that one. However you determine a proper and appropriate as an auditor is totally good. Now, ideally, the auditor should use a selection method that has the potential for selecting items from the entire period under audit. Why do you want that? Well, the entire period under audit is the entire population. You want your sample to be representative of the population. As such, that is what we want. Stretch those legs, grab some coffee if you need it. We are powering through. We're having a good time here with sampling. Let's talk about the relationship between population and sample size. Now, a lot of these points are going to be items you'll see in multiple choice questions. You'll see throughout the exam. Some things to memorize and understand. Memorization and comprehension are both important in their own ways. Here we go. Unless the population is very small, because if you got a very small population, very different. If you got 5 items as compared to 10,000 items, you're just dealing with different animals there. So unless it's very small, the population size does not have any direct impact on the size of the sample that is needed for statistical sampling when testing internal controls using attributes sample. This here, you'll see this actually a decent amount in multiple choice questions, my experience here. Population size does not have direct impact on the size of the sample. Just hone in on that. Super important there. Going to be something that is tested a lot. And if we think about that, well, unless the population is small, and if it's small, every item within the population has more of a meaning, more of an impact. But if you've got a massive sample, let's say you got a school with, say, theoretically 10 students and a school with 10,000 students, well, your samples you're going to have to be very particular with your sample, the 10 students, because just one student now is 10% of the entire population. But if you got 10,000 students, it's a different story. Each student you select is not as big of a deal because you've just got so many in that population. So this statement, make it part of your repertoire in your mind, memorize it, understand it, you'll see it. Next up, the size of the sample is determined by the amount of data needed to achieve the desired level of accuracy and precision. Again, nothing revolutionary. We're just talking through important points. You determine how many sample items you're going to choose based on what you need to get an accurate representation of the population. Now, what are going to be factors that lead into that? Population size, the cost to sample each item. Just like everything in auditing, we've got the cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it, or are we wasting too much time and money to do these particular actions? The level of risk will be considered when determining the size of sample needed. Population size is taken into account when determining the sampling methods and techniques that will be used to select the sample. For example, if the population size is small, a simple random sample may be used. But so if you've got just 10 students on campus, yeah, you might just say, all right, blindfold, 1, 2, 3, picking you. But if you got 10,000, okay, you want to make sense with 10,000 students, there are obviously probably a lot more criteria within them, right? There's with that many students, they're going to be just so much more different. So if you have more and more transactions, each transaction has the opportunity to be so much more different, right? If you've got 10 debt transactions, they're probably going to be much more similar than 10,000 debt transactions would be to each other. That being said, so you're going to take more complex methods when you have greater population sizes because you want to make sure you capture the accurate representation of all these different types within a larger population. There we go. However, if the population size is large, a more sophisticated sampling technique, such as stratified sampling, may be used. We'll see a slide on stratified sampling, talk about that a little bit more in depth there. Therefore, population size does not directly impact the size of the sample, but it does influence the method used. Important point there. Like we said before, population size does not directly impact the size of the sample, but it influences the sampling method. See, there's the connection. They'll try to trick you, but I have faith in you. You're smart, you're cunning, you are hardworking. You will not fall for these dirty little tricks here as we're studying for the exam. Got some more relationships here. Oh boy, our relationships great. Make sure you have good relationships. Call your mom, call your dad, call your best friend. Maintain those relationships. Hard, right? You need support as you're studying for the exam. But make sure that you have people supporting you. Now, enough about interpersonal relationships. Let's get back to our relationships between sample size, expected deviation rate, and tolerable rate. All right. And just generally, before even diving in here, right? Okay, your sample size, we talked about that. You can select 10 out of 10,000, maybe that's your sample size. Now, your expected deviation rate, just generally speaking, think about the name. It's how much you expect the sample to deviate from the population. And then tolerable rate, what's your tolerable rate of issues, right? Like this could be with materiality, or what's your tolerable rate of mistake? We'll see this time and time again throughout the exam. The sample size for a test of controls is proportional to the expected rate of errors and inversely proportional to the acceptable rate of deviation. But let's take a look at that. The sample size for a test of controls, so how many items you select, is proportional to the expected rate of errors. Okay, right? So you're going to select more items as you expect to see more errors, right? If you just expect that you're going to see many more problems, well, you're going to just do more work. And it's inversely proportional to the acceptable rate of deviation. So if the acceptable rate of deviation is high, meaning you're willing to accept more problems, the sample size will go down. Just understanding these relationships, it's similar to within audit risk, how we see with audit risk, we've got those different risks and how they go up and down, and how the acceptable level of each risk is inversely proportional to the work you do, et cetera, like that. If more mistakes are anticipated, the auditor should opt for a higher sample size. On the other hand, if the rate of deviation is more permissive, then fewer items need to be chosen. Cool. Looking good there. The sample size for a test of controls is determined by the size of the population being tested and the desired confidence level. So how are we going to determine our sample size? We need to understand the relationship with these other factors. How are we going to determine it? The expected rate of errors and the acceptable rate of deviation both play a role in how large the sample size should be. Just drilling this home, talking about it through and through. If more mistakes are anticipated, then the auditor will want to increase the sample size to ensure enough items are chosen to accurately represent the population. Similarly, if the rate of deviation is more permissive, then fewer items will need to be chosen as the auditor can allow for more variance in the results. Drilling this home, I know some of this sounds a little redundant to itself, and that's fine. I did it there on purpose, right? I love the concept of reinforcement, and especially the way I learned for the exam was the more I saw questions of the same caliber, of the same topic, I knew in the way I was studying and the resources I was using, I knew that was more important. So my method here, as I've mentioned before, and I'll continue to mention, if something is pretty important, I'm going to drill it in. I'm going to bring it up multiple times so you don't forget it and so you understand how important. I know everything I say is important, and I know you know that. Right? Everything I say, everything that comes out of my mouth is important. Pay attention, but these other things are going to be even more important. I know, shocking, shocking. But I am going to get you there. We will do this together. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.